Emma. Together we are birds of feather. By ourselves, we're insignificant, nothing. And thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you to all of our amazing panel members. What a few. And actually we have to say thank you to everyone at the big board and to Ali and Yosef who put together DC Residents. They're right back there. They're awesome. This has been an amazing week for us. They had folks in here yesterday talking about creative writing and journalism, and a panel tomorrow about the future of the music industry in DC. So it's an exciting time, and it's an exciting thing to be a part of. For a while now, Emma and I have been thinking about sort of fashion in DC and how much it has grown in the time that we've been here, and how it is going to sort of blossom from its current state and grow in the coming years. And it's been really exciting when we were both at Warren to work with so many local designers and so many local boutique owners, and there's so much energy around fashion in the district right now that we're really excited and energetic, but also really type A, nuts and bolts type people. And so we were like, let's convene a panel rather than a happy hour or a party or anything like that, and really sort of hash out, you know, where do the different stakeholders in the fashion community see this community going, and where do, and all those stakeholders are you guys too. So it's everyone on the panel and then everyone here. So, you know, as an independent designer, you know, what support do you need? Or as somebody who's a blogger or a member of the press, what interests you? And, you know, as someone who's part of an organization that kind of provides structural underpinning, what can you do to support everyone else, and what can everyone else do to interface with you? So there are a lot of really great questions, and I think our role is primarily going to be to let these folks talk and, you know, ask questions when needed, but really we want to hear from everyone in the audience. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and shout it out. I think we're going to start by getting everyone to introduce themselves. So Liz, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Liz Fassbender. I am owner and editor of a fashion lifestyle blog called So Much to Smile About, and I also am a co-founder of CapFABB, which is Capital Area Fashion and Beauty Bloggers. My co-founder Lacey Maffetone is also here. We started out at a happy hour with about 15 girls, and these days we have over 250 bloggers that are part of our organization. We organize monthly meetups and work with local boutiques and designers to do events, that sort of thing.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Brooks-Cropper. I'm president and CEO of the Greater Washington Fashion Chamber of Commerce and executive director of the DC Fashion Foundation, as well as we're just getting ready to recently launch our DC Fashion Incubator project with Arts Commission in the Convention Center. So that will be happening by mid-December. Let's see, where do I start? Let's see, we started with getting a piece of legislation passed to create the Fashion Commission in the city in 2007. However, we were looking at what was happening then in 2005. I think it was Aracalis and Ed Asher that got together and started the collection. I just had recently had my son, and I was just looking at what was happening in DC, and I said, okay, I think it's time, because different brands, European brands, and what Aracalis was doing here. You had your glossy mags. Now I think at the time it was a DC Style magazine, I think, was going under, but then turned around, DC Modern Luxury came on the scene. So DC started to change in about 2005, 2006, 2007. I used to work for Mayor Anthony Williams from 2002 to 2005. So definitely DC was a different place when it came to supporting the creative economy. During that time, at the time when I worked for the administration, had my own fashion production company called Style Movement Consultants. I was producing the Congressional Black Caucus fashion shows and the Smithsonian Institute Folk Life Festival fashion shows at the time. So during that time, fashion in DC was about fashion for charity. It wasn't about fashion for the industry. However, you know, the designers from this area and from New York and Philly and Jersey and Virginia and everyone that come in here, it was just, I was hearing a lot of feedback from them. that we're getting tired of coming to DC and showcasing our collection here, and they didn't feel that they were getting the support that they needed. So I just, put that in the back of my mind, and I did resign from my position in 2005 for Mayor Anthony Williams, and I left the city. But like I said, I was in Baltimore, not that far away, and I was just watching to see what was going on in DC, and I came back in 2007, and I started the movement to say fashion is an industry, it's a trade, we need to support it, and that's where I spearheaded this initiative.
My name is Marquis Perkins, and I'm the Director of Marketing for the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. And the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, I guess one of the main things that we're known for is providing grants for arts organizations and artists. And over the last few years, as fashion has started to become a more talked about topic in DC, we've started to explore ways of engaging the fashion community and figuring out ways to reach out to them, because it's an art, but in the past, because fashion wasn't seen as this huge contributor to the economy in DC, we never really reached out to fashion designers to say, hey, we have money for your projects. But now it's now that fashion is starting to come up, and it's becoming more of a bigger a force, but contributing a little bit more to the economy of the creative economy of DC. Now we're starting to reach out, and in the next year you're going to see us doing some more targeted marketing towards fashion designers, because we do have money for your projects, and we need you to come and get it. It's here.
Don't mock him right now. He doesn't have it on.
It's not in my pocket. That's it.
My name is Aidah Fontenot. I have a local fashion line here in DC called Aidah Collection. I do hand-painted, eco-chic, and handmade fashions here in DC. And I started my fashion line 3 years ago, and I started it by myself, and it's been a total grassroots effort here, and I am really committed to seeing the face of fashion in DC be recognized by other cities like New York and Miami. So really glad to be here.
I'm Holly Thomas. I'm a slightly low talker, so I'm sorry if you guys can't hear me. I am the DC editor for Refinery 29, which is a global fashion site that just launched in DC a week and a half ago. And before that, I covered fashion and shopping and local designers for the Washington Post for about 7 years. And I also founded my own vintage retail and design collective called Butler and Claypool.
My name is Jordan Culberson. I'm editor-in-chief of ReadySetDC, and with the team at ReadySet, I founded a fashion show to spotlight or put a spotlight on emerging designers in DC called Fashion District.
Well, first, Emily and Maren, thank you for inviting me and for putting this together. I think it's really great. And my name is Jackie Flanagan, and in 2003, I left the corporate world to start a little shop named Nana on U Street, and it was inspired by all things vintage, modern, handmade, and mindfully made. And after 8 years on U Street, I recently relocated to a neighborhood I love named Mount Pleasant, and we're continuing our shop there. And I love supporting local designers. I think that the design in DC is quality. I think that the style in DC is quality. I don't necessarily think I'm a style maker. I just really enjoy having a small business and enjoy watching people do what they love and be creative with what they wear. And I'm glad to be here.
Hey guys, Pranav, Vora from Hugh and Crye. Thank you also for having me here tonight, and glad to be here with all of you guys. Started Hugh and Crye about 2 years ago. It's an online retailer of menswear, and our first product is this notion that lean and athletically built guys can find ready-made shirts that fit better with a different sizing approach. And that sizing approach is based on the shape of your torso. So we launched that about 2 years ago. We are in Georgetown, and we do have a showroom now, but we are very much still an online retailer. And that's about it. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So part of why we asked each of you to sit on this panel is because you're fabulous. The other part is that you each represent a sort of different stakeholder in this fashion community in DC. And each, it's sort of like the ingredients in the mixing bowl. Like, in order for the bread to rise, there has to be all of these different small communities, whether it's media and it's more established media, or it's a network of 200 bloggers, which I think you should be like screaming off the roof about, or local designers, or local fashion companies, or folks like ReadySet who are producing events that showcase these designers, or local boutiques. So it's all really important to have you in the mix. And so I was hoping we could start out, if you want to just really quickly, from your particular vantage point, give us sort of like state of the union, what you see going on in fashion in DC right now. Sorry.
I have to start everyone.
We can start with you. How do you want to go?
I'm happy to start.
Okay, go for it.
No, I'm happy to start. So I've lived here in DC, first in Mount Pleasant about 10 years ago, lived on and off, moved away for a few years. And before that I did kind of marketing and strategy and that kind of thing. So I wasn't really kind of attuned to what was going on in the local fashion scene, but I kind of started to pay attention to it. And I can say it's kind of an interesting moment, especially for guys, because there are a lot of, I think I see guys more often than not creating occasions to dress better. They certainly do go out and go to the Tweed Ride and go to other things and dress for that occasion, but more often than not seeing that they're putting a little bit more attention and care into dressing better. And so I think that's something that I've just picked up on and we see every day at Hugh and Crye.
I think DC is not a little New York. Like, I think we have our own point of view, and I love seeing more and more points of view that are very different and independent. I tend to to cater to women who have a job, a professional job, or they're in the office often, and I don't think they all want to wear the same thing that everyone else is wearing. And I think they just need more and more choices, whether it's more local designers or more places that will feature more unique things. So I think DC is a lot stronger than people give it credit for in terms of how we dress and how we think about how we want to be when we go out on the street.
Well, I'm originally from the area, and I guess then and now is a completely different story. There are a lot of people who feel like they can take fashion and style and design into their own hands, and they should. And this is a great place to do that. And so in spring of 2010, seeing that and being inspired by some people that I was very blessed to meet, who were out there designing and out there opening these stores, we started an event to sort of make sure that these people are getting a voice and make sure that they have a place to show their stuff. So, and from then, even though it's only been like a year and a half, the difference is astounding. The fact that, like you said, there are 250 fashion blogs that are registered in DC. That's crazy. But it's wonderful. And so, hopefully this will become a place where people feel safe enough but inspired enough to create small businesses and for designers to set up shop here and bloggers to start a blog.
And I think, I can speak a little bit about like print versus new media. That's kind of my new transition, and it's amazing that there are 250 bloggers. Because when I started trying to cover the local scene for the Post, there were 5 bloggers. There was Fashion is Spinach, Project Beltway, Capitol Hill Style, DC Celine, and like one other. And now my Google reader is like 1,000 new posts every day from like 500 blogs. And I think what's the most amazing to me is that you guys are finding each other, and there's a platform that people are connecting in new ways, and I think that's just a huge part of the evolution. And it's nice because the print media here just can't, they don't have the bandwidth to cover at the rate that things are happening. Like tonight, there's 3 events. Last night, there's 4 events. Tomorrow, there's like 5 events. And I think it's made this incredible opportunity for new media to step in and kind of give you guys what you need and support you and help you kind of find each other.
From a designer's perspective, I would say here in DC, I'm not from here either, but I started networking a lot about 3 years ago when I started my fashion line. And just from talking to other local designers here, it seems like at first we were all kind of very separated. We had no idea what each other were doing. We were totally disconnected from each other. And we're all kind of happy to see that we've been able to participate in a lot of the same events. And now we've been supporting each other's collections and trying to collaborate more. So I think that all the other designers that I've talked to here locally are really excited about collaborating with each other and doing more stuff together.
I think this is a great time for DC fashion. You know, it's since people are just starting to pay attention to it and it's really starting to make some noise. I feel like DC is just starting to, it's still trying to find itself, and how it's, you know, and what DC style is and what that looks like. But people are paying attention. You have, you know, places like Howard, who for the I don't know how many time, you know, for like the umpteenth time has been voted like the #2 most fashionable school in the nation. So people are paying attention to what's going on here. But you know, it's still new. I mean, it's so new that we don't really have like economic numbers, like economic impact numbers from fashion in the city. And as that continues to grow, and you know, we get to boast what those numbers are, it's just going to get even bigger and better.
And just to piggyback on what you're saying, because we do speak like government, because I'm like have an MPA, I like come from a government background. I would say the Bureau Labor Statistics program manager actually just called our organization to help us, to help them get some statistics, and also to define, to create those codes for DC, which is very interesting. And I was like, okay, it feels like, oh, we're getting ready to arrive. You know, we have like, you know, the labor department and, you know, Bureau of Statistics now asking for things. SBA on the federal level has actually requested to sit down with me in regards to the Fashion Incubator project. And that was mainly just from Arts Commission and the Convention Center giving us 2 retail spaces lease free for a year for us to erect this designer studio and incubator over on N Street between 7th and 9th Street, and also have the virtual office space for the designers, but the designer co-op open environment. And then these designers are coming together, like Aidah said, and they're wanting to collaborate and work together. I mean, I'm wearing Sendema tonight, you know, fabulous designer in this area, and her construction is amazing. And that's the thing, a lot of people are like, oh, you don't have quality designers here. Yes, we do. You know, it's just a matter of getting that visibility, that marketing outreach type of grant or funding behind us, whether it's with cultural tourism or with Destination DC or anything, so that we can get ready to kind of just put us out there on the forefront. It's good that social media and everyone is, you know, starting to write more about it, but also the city, again, needs to get behind it, because at the end of the day, when people outside come in, you know, where do they go? They go to your tourism arm. So why are they not showing the 1,900 fashion retailers that's in the city and say we have no economic impact? Yeah, we do. It's 1,900 fashion retailers here. That's retail sales tax. We're contributing to DC's economy. So they need to get behind that. In Housing Community Development, which is DC Housing Community Development for the city, just granted the foundation, the C3 arm of my C6 marketing outreach grant, to do just that. So it's 2 retail guides that we have to come together and produce for this city. And it's a creative economy retail guide and a creative economy resource directory. Of course, because it's the Fashion Foundation that received the grant, we'll have a lot of fashion in there.
I guess from the blogger's perspective, it's been really interesting to watch how DC fashion has sort of exploded recently, and I think that that's you can see that in the growth of the bloggers. When I actually have only been blogging a little over a year, it really hasn't been long at all, and I just did it as something, you know, fun hobby, as opposed to my, you know, government relations job, which I feel like so many people in the area do. You know, it's one thing in the day and then totally another thing in the evening. And I made some connections with other bloggers. Lacey was one of the more important ones. We connected and said, you know, how, is there a group that we can, you know, chat with other people who are doing the same sort of thing? And we didn't really see anything that was there, so we just decided to create one. And I think, as I mentioned, when we first got together, we had, you know, 15 girls getting together at a bar for drinks, just to, you know, sort of put, you do all this communication over social media and over the blogs, and commenting and all that sort of work. We wanted to be able to get together in person and meet each other face to face. And then since that initial meeting, and that's actually our first meetup was in February. So since then, from 15 to now about 250. We have a listserv and we do meetups monthly, and we try to connect our bloggers with local boutiques. We've done a couple meetups at boutiques in the Adams Morgan area, where we basically just get to come in. We did a boutique, a meetup at Carbon, where we were actually able to meet with the designers who had worked on some of the things that were there, got to meet them, talk with them, and the bloggers just love that opportunity. I think any chance they can get to connect to the local fashion community, they will just take advantage of it. And we're still growing. I think we get at least between 1 to 5 new people wanting to join the community every day. And we just had an event actually with Ann Taylor, so it's now even the national brands are starting to recognize that they can tap into the bloggers in the area and really get a lot of visibility. So it's grown tremendously just in a very short period of time.
So, and I promise from now on you don't have to speak in order. So I think the place that I really want to start from a positive place, which is what does this fashion community do really well? What is in place that's really sort of helped it thrive? Or what are things that you see from your vantage point really working well?
Can I jump in? From a designer's perspective, the charity events have been fantastic. They've given us an outlet or a venue that's really public, and the charities always have a lot of national publicity behind them, and it's giving us venues to showcase our design. So for me, that's what's been it.
And I think collaborations are starting to become more and more important. I think at first people are always afraid to share their ideas and share their content, and I feel like now, like the Spicy Candy Girls and La Petite Marmoset, they're doing lookbooks, and President Wears Prada, collaborates with everyone. And I think building that network and sort of creating something together that's more than you can do on your own is really important. And it's nice to see people actually making things happen. It's great.
Similarly, I mean, everyone is so supportive, I think, of each other, which is nice. Everyone sort of has this feeling like, no, there is fashion DC, and rather than compete against each other, we're going to do everything we can to get together, to chat, to work together, whatever we can do to support and show that there is this going on. It's been very supportive community, not competitive at all, just really friendly to everybody else. Nice.
I think the DC fashion community is really good at working with limited resources. Right. You don't have this huge manufacturing industry here. There isn't a lot of investment in fashion here, but some people are still making it work and making a living out of it. So I think that's one of the things that we do well.
Other strengths that you guys see?
Well, I'll say the obvious, the people. The people here who have interest in it. I can't tell you how many times I meet someone who works as a contractor and then designs on the side. Makes scarves or hats or jewelry, and that's amazing. The fact that there's such a web of creativity and connection between each other, and it's just sort of finding out how to bridge that and get each other connected where people actually need the help.
And to piggyback on that, I mean, the disposable income's here. So why wouldn't fashion be here? I think on the news yesterday they had stated, didn't they state that DC was number one for shopping?
And Arlington is number 2.
Yeah. And then I think Nashville was in there. New York wasn't even on the list, or top 3. But so right there, that kind of says it all. But I will say that over the years, which is very important, the infrastructure is starting to be put in place. Because in order for this community to thrive, we have to get the infrastructure in place. So that's starting to happen. It's starting to go, fashion education is starting to happen. with the programs in the schools, after school programs. I mean, a nonprofit, So and Opportunities Never Ending, is in 3 different rec centers in this community. DC Camp Runway, a fashion camp, has happened at Sherwood Rec right here at 10th and G for 5 years, you know. Other people are doing fashion camps. I mean, there's so much that's happening here that it's like, it's enough for everyone to get a piece of it. And then people are slowly coming together to work together, but more importantly, the infrastructure has to be put in place, and that's what's slowly being put in place. Because fashion is one thing, style is another, and you have small business. You know, so you have your fashion entrepreneur, so then you have small local business development that is putting resources into that entrepreneur. So we have to look at it and start to say, okay, when we say fashion, that's an industry, that's a trade. We have to put that infrastructure in place. Style is one thing, fashion is another. Because a lot of people come up to me and I'm like, President of the Fashion Chamber of Commerce, and they say, oh, well, how do I look? I don't really care how you look, you know. And then when I tell them I have 10 years experience in the criminal justice field, I worked for the Secret Service, and they say, oh, you're the fashion police, ha ha, you know. So it's like, no, I'm the advocate, you know. I'm the one that hits the streets, and when they say no, I say no, I'm gonna stay there for 4 or 5 years until you say yes. You know, and start to be on Capitol Hill. We formed, you know, the Apparel Manufacturing Fashion Business Caucus on Capitol Hill. So we have now Congress involved. Was invited to the White House. Start bring, you know, just kind of bringing that visibility there, but more importantly, the jobs. That's what they want to hear. We keep saying the economic impact. At the bottom line is, how many jobs are we creating? You know, how many stores are opening up to contribute to the retail sales tax? If a fashion school is in place so that we can continue to grow our industry. At the end of the day, if there's no fashion education here, which they took all of the vocational skills, home economics, family consumer science, what you were doing in school, out of the schools in Washington, D.C. Okay, we have to get that back in place. DOES has recognized that, and they're hoping to launch a fashion institute for disconnected youth 16 to 24, so that we can launch that fashion academy, that 2-year academy, like West Potomac Fashion School and Fairfax County Public School. So the infrastructure is slowly being built.
I think you brought up the statistic that came out yesterday, which was really fascinating to me, mostly because I read it on a New York-based blog where there was like disbelief. It was like, what is this? Like, people in DC spend more on clothes per capita on a monthly basis than us? How can that be? And it, to me, drove home this point that there's a lot of money in here, you know, in the district, in the surrounding area. There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of money. And they're spending a lot of that money on clothes. Yet none of the designers I know in the district are like, yeah, I'm going gangbusters. Like, I am selling to everybody in the DC area because they all know me and they all want to buy what I'm making. So, you know, there's to sort of kind of get into this conversation of, you know, not necessarily weaknesses, but where are the gaps. To me, it's like you've got this great consumer base and you've got this great design and fashion and style community that's grown a lot. And it's like one's going that way and the other's going that way. Right now, there's just a disconnect. And, you know, more people are sort of hearing about the local fashion community, but that to me hasn't happened yet to an extent that it needs to really support the number of designers and the breadth of shops and the breadth of, you know, creative entrepreneurs in the city. So just using that as a starting point, gaps, things, weaknesses, things that you really need or you really see a need for.
There are a lot of gaps. You know, just starting from the most basic level, the talent that's creating fashion and, you know, the talent that's doing the PR and the marketing, we have to find a way to keep them here instead of going elsewhere. I know so many people that went to school in DC that, you know, then go on to New York. And I know people that are, you know, doing PR marketing for major fashion labels that could be here, working with local designers on PR and marketing. So PR and marketing is one problem. And then you know, there's, I feel like we're more consumers than producers here. You know, we have a ton of shops and we're selling a ton of fashion labels from other places, but we're spending money on it and that money is going outside of DC. We have to figure out how to keep that talent here so that money stays here. And once that money stays here, then it becomes easier to be an advocate for fashion here. And then people start to pay more attention from outside consumers to investors to the local government. You know, you don't have, I can't think of a major fashion city where manufacturing fashion isn't part of their economy. And we're trying to become this major fashion city, but you know, that's a huge component that's missing. You know, we have designers here. I don't know where your clothes are your clothes made?
100% handmade. And you know why? Because I started the fashion line not with a loan or a grant or anything, just out of my own pocket money, and it's still my own pocket money to this day. And I can't afford to spend, you know, thousands of dollars to get 2 blouses from one collection made in every size and every color that's popular that season. It's just not going to happen, you know. So I'm even though I want to use like ethical factories that are overseas where I can produce stuff faster and easier, I have to make it myself because the resources just aren't here. Right. Basically, I mean.
I think I share the same pain there. You have, you know, when you work with factories abroad, you have volume minimums, you have certain capital that you have to commit in advance for fabric, for the trims, to get everything together, for the cut, make, trim operation, all that, and it's well in advance before you receive it. And then you have to merchandise it, you have to market it and get it ready for the web or in person. And so it's our problem right now is that it's an extremely capital-intensive business. And so what we're trying to do is, one, get smarter with the supply chain. Are there smarter ways to actually, you know, figure out payment terms with the supplier, figure out ways to not have to put up, you know, so much capital without getting committed purchases or something of that sort with the consumers. There's that, and then there's also looking at funding alternatives locally and otherwise. Banks, you have to put up a lot of personal collateral, and that's just something that at this point I'm not game for. But then it's also like talking to the angel or the VC community, and that's very difficult here because they're not thinking of DC in the same way that I hate to say it, New York. New York fashion and technology has taken off, and it'd be great to see that here. And I think there's this love-hate relationship with the government because you have a lot of skilled technology workers here, but they all have security clearances and they're all commanding a decent pay, and so it's almost kind of a cultural shift too. It's working for a startup that could have a big upside, you know, 5-7 years down the road if it's venture backed or angel backed, and that's hard to kind of get off the ground. So
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I was gonna say that I don't think the marketing is so bad here in DC. Like, you know, with the Fashion Blogger Network and all that, the marketing is pretty good. People are buzzing about it, but there's nothing in place that really helps us sell. Like, I'm a creative person, and I have many hats, of course, with running a business, but I'm not good at actual sales kind of things. Like, I can do marketing and stuff like that, but I would say we need more help with actually selling and talking to the boutique owners and major department stores. A sales rep, but I don't know how to do that.
But I still think that's part of the marketing, though. It's like, you know, for the fashion industry to sustain itself here, I mean, it's going to take more than just the DC consumer. You know, I think we, you know, sometimes we don't think big enough. We talk about national brands, but really at the end of the day, they're New York brands. You know what I mean? Like they're New York brands or wherever they're from, or they're a Paris brand or a London brand, but they've become national. I think we got to figure out a way to think bigger with our marketing and our PR. We have over 20 million visitors that come into this city every year. And if those people knew about the fashion industry here,
but that's where Destination DC should have that on their website, and they don't, and that's the tourism arm and cultural tourism. So it's those entities that need to include us into that so that people know that they're here and exist. I mean, they should know that Laura from El Shandy was in Carmel Boutique, and and what Christopher is doing on 14th Street with Moulet, and so Tari Boutique in Georgetown, and and just people are the indie boutiques, independent boutiques. They're starting to reach out and put these independent designers in their boutiques now. So it's slowly, I mean, it's gonna probably take another 5 years, but it's slowly getting there, and that's why this whole fashion business incubator is taking off. I mean, San Francisco has reached out to me, they formed a fashion incubator. Seattle has formed their fashion incubator. Atlanta's in the process of forming their fashion incubator. We're forming ours here. Toronto has their fashion incubator. Detroit has their fashion incubator. Now to the point we're on conference call once a week now, getting ready to form a coalition, a national coalition, so that we can go after the big money and bring it into the foundation or the incubator or whatever to support. The fashion incubator that we're erecting now, that's phase 1 of the incubator here, but we already have a manufacturer wholesaling company, Kane and Carlisle, that reached out to me, and they're in the space, and they're getting ready, they already have like 4 seamstress, and they're going to be supporting the designers in this incubator so that they can start producing and making the multiple pieces so they can meet that buyer's demand, and as well as doing the trade missions to Peru that we've been doing for the past 3 years, so that they're not doing the overseas manufacturing, they're doing it in Peru, that's somewhere close. But the phase 2 of the fashion incubator, which SVA is getting involved now, and Department of Interior as well, because they want that manufacturing is getting ready to come, and over in Anacostia, because there is manufacturing industry zone space, like 5,000, that Arch Development, and now wants to get involved, and he has an apparel manufacturing background, and now but again, the infrastructure, we just have to slowly put it in place.
So I think that's a really good, and I want Jackie to speak to this really quickly. It's the designed in DC, bought in DC, and it's that made in DC that seems to really be missing. And we had talked about this just a second ago, so if you want to sort of share about that.
I will. Can I answer the other question first?
Go for
I'm
it.
so excited to talk. No, I'm just kidding. I think that you're talking about gaps in DC, and I think it may seem surprising that a shop owner would say this, but I think we need more shops. I think we need more points of view that are independent, that each designer can find their space to sell through. Because I'm just one, and I can feature one new designer a month, and I can do everything I can, but there's too much talent here. And there are people that will buy it if it's represented and well, if it's given the space and the time on a rack or an event. So I think that we need more shops, and I think there are people that, I don't know, I think there have been a couple of waves over the last 8 years, but 2 people that have worked with me have their own shops, and 1 person we're getting ready to get her ready to have her own shop. So I just that's a huge goal of mine. If we can cluster them all together, we're all going to do better. I firmly believe 3 more clothing stores in my neighborhood, we're all going to do better than just one on its own. So that's what I wanted to say. Gaps in DC.
So I think one of the things that I'm hearing a little bit just come out in this conversation, but was also the #1 question that people asked. So we emailed everybody who registered to come tonight yesterday and said, what questions do you have? And the #1 question we got was, where do I find information? If I'm new to the community, where do I find information about the fashion community in DC? And I think, at least for me, I would have a hard time answering that, because there are a lot of people doing a lot of different things. So, and maybe Holly, I know you sort of had your hand up a little bit, but as someone who comes from a lot of the sort of information and media side of it, what do you see as you have to go out and mine for information every day for your job? So, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I think it's a little bit different, whether you're a blogger or a designer, but I think if you want to make those connections, you have to be in the community. You have to network. You have to monitor social media. And I think if you're a creative, it's so easy to get in this little bubble and just kind of do your thing. And you're not meeting other people. You're not seeing what other people are producing. You're not going to Nana and saying, hey, I have this really cool line. I think you'd really like it. You're just at home working and then going to your government job. So I think you really have to make it a full-time job. Even if you have another job, you have to market yourself.
I'm sorry, you can do whatever you want. I just want to piggyback. I don't have a day job. I do this full time. This is all my life. It's all I do. I'm just totally a creative artist person, and it's still really hard. Even though I put in all my time every single day, it's like still so hard, and I still have 5 interns that help me do it, and it's like so hard.
What I was going to say earlier, and I can't take credit for saying this because it was actually Fern Malice from IMG who said it. It's like, if you're a creative person, you're not a business person. You just have to accept it. You're not a marketer. You have to find someone, whether you go to SBA or you go to, some small business clinic, or you just find someone who's really savvy and entrepreneur, who's not even in fashion. You have to have someone that you can bounce ideas off and that can be really critical of your business plan and kind of tell you that's not a good idea. I think that's, and it's the same like creative bubble. You just have to, if you can't get out of it, you have to find someone to help you.
I think that one other thing is that everyone in this room is doing something new in a new space, so it's hard for everyone. For the designer, for the person who's trying to make policy, for the writer, it's all new. I mean, it's not that it's all new, but it's like this push that is different, and it's a path that hasn't necessarily been seen as quality or that could stand on its own legs. So it's hard for everyone to just keep on keeping on.
And it's also the branding. I mean, like you just stated, quality that keeps coming up. Quality, quality, quality. Okay, DC, it's like fashion's not quality. We have to kind of like rebrand DC. And as what Holly was saying, as far as the creatives here, yeah, they're creative. They're not business minded, believe me. So, like with my organization, we started Fashion in Business with the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development here, so that we could do that business training. Just recently, we incorporated 4 technical design classes into Fashion in Business. Tonight, there's a pattern making class going on, and actually teaching about 7 students how to make their own patterns. So Fashion Design 101 happened through over 2 weeks. Last week and the week before, and then product development and production and manufacturing. So we just decided to put in about 4 technical design. But at the end of the day, manufacturing and production, I mean, that can get that's business. We said technical design, but that's really the pattern making and the sewing classes that are getting ready to happen. But business, yeah, we have Bank of America there, and believe me, we're viewed as a risk. So at the end of the day, you want that capital, but you got to convince them to give you that funding.
I think there needs to be, just piggybacking on you saying branding, there needs to be, just someone doing advocacy for local DC designers. In New York they have, CFDA, and then American Vogue. Yeah. Well, but it's just you. It's just you. Yeah, but it's just you. But there's also American Vogue. If it's American Vogue, but it's a New York fashion magazine. They put on things like Fashion's Night Out, which has become a national thing now. But there needs to be something where people, an event where people go out and support local designers, whether it be a day or a week or whatever. Just encourage people to go out and support local boutiques and local designers. I mean, maybe they get a discount or whatever, but at the end of it, they know who these designers are.
They just did one last night too. Let's shop local first for them.
Right, but
which is a good start.
It's a good start, but something bigger. Partner with a big, whether it's a DC Modern Luxury or something like that, a big publication to be a media partner to really get out there and get the word out and make this a huge local initiative.
So I think one of the challenges that I'm hearing is, and I like food, so this is how I think about it, but sorry, it's not a fashion thing. when you guys talk about there's sort of being a gap here and there, in reality, a lot of those things are going on, but it's just the information isn't getting shared. So, you know, people who are designers in DC and desperately want to have something produced here, you know, Jackie earlier tonight was like, I have a friend who is setting up, you know, is already doing smaller production in DC. And to me, I'm like, wow, because I know like 1,000 designers who could use that. And do you want to go ahead?
Oh, no, I was just going to make a comment. In regards to what you were saying about the gap and what he was saying as far as like we're more consumers and producers. For those who are producers, like I myself am a personal shopper, so I know of the designers here, like Aidah and other ones. So for my clients, I can, you know, show them that. But I think the gap more so is accessibility and knowing about them. So it's not that they're not interested, because for my clients, I show them local designers all the time, and they're extremely interested and will purchase or will wear. But they, on their own, without me, they don't know about them, and it's not accessible for them. They want to be able to go into a store, like she said, to have more shops and just purchase it without having to go online and research and find out who's here and whatnot. So I think the gap is knowing about and getting to.
Completely. And so that's the analogy I was going to use. It's like when you make something and you've got all of the ingredients and they're like in their own little bowl, and they haven't been tossed together yet. And so I guess I see one of the big challenges as being, how does that information get shared? You know, how do we as a community be more strategic about making sure that everyone knows what everyone else is doing, everyone knows what resources are out there? So I don't know, but I mean that's a challenge. I mean, what do you think about
that's been the attempt of, you know, GWSCC to have that, be that resource, that advocate, that chamber of commerce, like the DC Chamber of Commerce, like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. But again, the resources come into play, you know, because, you know, big corporations like FedEx and all that are going to become members. That's how you sustain trade associations. It's about corporate partnership. It's not by the individual membership. That's not sustaining the organization. So by not having the resources, you're not able to really put the tools in place. Now things are slowly coming around because, you know, they're starting to see, like Destination DC has reached out and said, we want to promote more shopping, you know, as members of our community, but also because they're the marketing arm, the tourism marketing arm of the city, as well as a membership-based organization. So they want more retailers as members, but then it's like, can you afford $1,000 for membership? But then you have GWCC here. For company, it's $500, for individuals, $150. But again, it's not sustaining it. You have the big corporations. So it's, you know, we have to get those resources, but the risk, it's like, they're slowly coming around. This marketing outreach grant that Housing Community Development, because it's about community development. I mean, does anyone know 360 Boutique on 12th Street Northeast? Do you even go over there? There's a little vintage boutique over there. It's actually, I think, one of the first boutiques of the city. No one knows about that and goes into that boutique. So again, it's about putting it out there, and then where you're putting it. You know, it needs to go in the hotels. It needs to go, you know, on all the tourism arms, and you know, the community needs to start shopping in their local boutique.
So I guess I would sort of challenge us to kind of push that another step, in that, you know, CapFABB has how many bloggers?
We're about 250.
About 250, and you know, Refinery 29 and ReadySet have how many readers between them? A lot.
49.
Yeah, a lot. So we've got, you know, I feel like part of what's happening is, you know, on one hand, we've got Christine, you doing all of this advocacy work, but again, you know, you're doing all this advocacy work. Like, you're having to take on so much of that on your own. And then we've you know, sitting right next to you, we've got 250 bloggers. So it's like, but how do we collaborate?
But they're
actually,
doing it. Yeah.
I mean, lately, and we are new. We've only been organized since February. But you know, what we can do is, what we've been doing lately is we'll partner with a boutique, a local boutique with local designers, and we will host an event there. And all the boutique has to do is open up their doors to us, and we tell our bloggers that we're doing this. and we will sell out. We will sell out at 100 girls. Guys as well. We'll sell out 100 people easily. And then even though people might not give DC bloggers the credit that perhaps they are due, if you think about it, if you have 75 bloggers come to your store, look at your designers in that store, and then they go and they write posts about it. That's 75 posts. And you know, even if there's only a few people reading their blogs, it's still getting the information out there. And I mean, I've been in DC in that area for 4 years, and I've been to 2 boutiques recently that I didn't even know existed because of what we've been doing with trying to connect the bloggers with designers with boutiques. And I think there is something to be said for, like, even though we maybe traditionally haven't been acknowledged as something that's you know, worthwhile, there definitely are. I mean, and it doesn't involve anything. There's nothing that you need to do except invite bloggers into your store, and then they're happy.
Yeah, there's a few
profile
bloggers that we've partnered up with, but I will say another gap too, and you touched on some one into the boutiques. I think another gap is that the designers are working out of their homes. They're not in the boutique. There's only a few that's in the boutique. So that's, you know, a huge gap, because anyone wanting to purchase something,
Well, if they don't have a showroom.
exactly. So that's where more, you know, like, you know, we've been pitching to developers that have vacant retail space. They can't get any tenants in it because of the economy. And you see Temporium, you know, what Philippa did with Pink Line Project with the library down here, you know, and then the pop-up that was on the corner in Douglas Jamal's facility. So because everything has to be subsidized right now because there's no resources, you know, to get that grant money, that foundation money, that's where, you know, have to start getting them into that retail space. And then also, like Aidah said, that designer management sales piece to pitch to that boutique to put their product in their store.
Yeah, do you guys want to jump in?
I think Liz is doing a great job up there, by the way. But I think the one thing that a lot of people miss is that my day job in political royalty is sales and marketing and PR, so that's what I do. And I have actually, with my blog, have actually been the salesman for most designers. I actually just did a giveaway with a recent jeweler, and literally was styling the jewels, wore them in my style post, and then said, hey, I'm gonna give these away and you can wear them too. And that's selling it for themselves, and there's 250 of us. So there's a lot of people that don't know we exist, and we existed before we organized, clearly, but I think we're just being more recognized now. But I think that although the creative space is not business savvy, there are a lot of people, and in the bloggers especially, that we're out there to do it for you. I mean, there are so many of them that say, I've had girls email me all the time asking, how do you get the giveaways to the local designers? I would love to get them to come call me and email me and talk to me. And I'm like, if they're just reach out to me, we will tell you. We are itching to get the local, the local even acknowledgement of the designers out there to our bloggers. And I think that, you know, when I explain to our local designers, here's how much percentage of my viewership is DC, and here's national, for them to understand that it's not, I mean, yes, DC is looking at you, but I'm also helping you outside as well, and really expanding your brand, and that's the sales for you. And I think that's where the disconnect is in the marketing and in the creative side. The bloggers are a little bit of both, and most of them, this isn't their day job. They just have a passion for it, and I think that translates. And that's what I say.
I'm sorry to say something. I don't think the problem is with the bloggers. I think DC fashion bloggers are really awesome. You guys are doing a great job, especially for me. I really love you guys. I think the problem the problem is kind of what Christine was saying, is that if someone has already taken the time to subscribe to a fashion blog, they're already a fashion person, but the majority of consumers, the people that are spending money, aren't fashion people. They're just regular people who have jobs that just have money they want to spend but don't know where to go. So I think we need to get in contact with Destination DC and stuff like that.
Well, there is an arm here some people are talking about forming that designer management kind of sales rep. I don't want to put her out there right now until she announces it and launch it, but they kind of was established maybe a year or so ago, and they worked with Tasha Sen, who was covered in DC Modern Luxury. So the media, whether it's print, news, you know, and the blog, social media community, they're actually covering the local talent here. But press is great. but with a buyer. That's how you make the fashion world go round, you know, is the buyer. So that's what we have to focus on, is getting them before these buyers.
So how do you connect? How do you connect the product to the consumer?
Well, I think this is a great first step. I mean, this panel itself, you have designers represented, store owners represented, media represented, DC government represented, and that's wonderful. That's a great first step. And of course, you guys who are interested and wanted to come out and listen to what everyone has to say. But we have a responsibility, I think, to put these words to actual work and make something of what we're talking about.
So,
I was just going to say that part of the disconnect from, I think, putting the product into the consumer's hand is the person who's creating the clothes knowing who they're targeting to, because if you are marketing or whatnot, you need to know who you're targeting to, because if you're targeting the wrong person, then the person you're targeting to isn't buying your stuff, and that's where the disconnect is. So it may just be analyzing your target market as far as a designer.
Sorry, I just got a frog in my throat. I have an idea. It's about a way to organize, you know, the fashion community. To actually have a DC Fashion Week, which everybody would be able to come together and, you know, talk about things like this. And I think it could easily be started if, let's say, there was a contest. Let's say there was a contest for the best designer in DC, and make it an East Coast thing, not just a DC contest, but it's eligible anywhere on the East Coast, let's say. And that would bring in a lot of new talent, and then you could, you know, build from there. And then you're, you know, that because DC needs a fashion week. It needs an organized, if there's fashion in DC, if there's a fashion week, then you get the factories, then you get the actual designers to stay here. It kind of just, like, it needs a nucleus. You know?
I was going to say, there is the DC Fashion Week, and it's, I hate to dump on it, but it's not very good.
What?
There is the DC Fashion Week, and I was saying I don't like to be critical of the scene, but it's the only place I've ever seen male models in sheer pants. And it's just what these guys do is by far the best fashion show that we're going to have here. You know, I think anytime soon. But I think the problem with doing that, with showcasing fashion that way, is that you're presenting a product that can't be produced. Like, there's no production here. There's no infrastructure. You can't have samples made. And so you can kind of promote local designers who make 10 pieces out of their homes as much as you want, but if Jackie can't buy a full collection, she can't sustain her business. And it's just this catch-22 of you have to have money to have samples. You have to have samples to sell to a boutique. And
well, I know 2010 we had started something called State of Style, and it was our advocacy day on Capitol Hill, and that's where we honored Fern Malice. You know, it started 7th on 6th and then evolved into New York Fashion Week and then Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. She since has left as VP of IMG Fashion and started her own small business again and gone back to her roots. And she, you know, pretty much had spoke. And also when the Save the Garment Center, because you know that's in jeopardy right now because of what Bloomberg did in rezoning that area. So a lot of the factories and production in New York and the Garment Center, that's history, is also closing down. Nanette Lepore spearheading that initiative. And when I went up in 2009 to speak at their rally and go around to some of the factories, they were saying, what are the other opportunities outside of New York? I mean, even some of the seamstress and sample makers in Donna Karen's studio that I met, you know, so things are starting to kind of shift because of, you know, power, government, resources, economic development, looking at different things. So when I was in New York, it was very interesting. They pretty much stated, you know, they know about DC Fashion Week. A few writers and editors came down, and yeah, they were shocked, and they said they will never come back.
Well, it's because it's not DC.
It's not DC Fashion. Exactly. So pretty much what they had addressed to me as an advocate is that we need to bring the fashion community to New York. Just like San Francisco, you know, Africa Rise is showing under the intent, we need to take our quality design talent to New York. And that was Fern Malice, you know, and all of them with Nanette Lepore with Save the Garment Center, that was their advice. And that's what we need to do.
Don't you think if you have a contest, the people will come? I mean, offer like a cash prize or something?
There
I don't think so.
There's other contests. I mean, at Charleston Fashion Week, which is in obviously Charleston, South Carolina, they do the same thing. That they started it with a Southeast competition, and now they've spread it to the East Coast, and they get designers as far north as even New York that come down for Charleston as well. But that's something that they've been working on for over 7 years now. So it's, if you're trying to create that in DC, it's going to have to take over what is now the current fashion week.
Well, what about something that's like, I think the great thing about DC is that it's not New York. And we don't have to like be under the umbrella of New York. I think we have enough quality here, and we have to work with what we have to get the designers what they need. And that is, we have great design, and the designers need the sales. And what if there were something like, you know, I think this idea of like the idea of the handmade and the craft, and they have the craft ambassadors and the craft fairs that seem to be these community centers. What if there was some type of fashion-backed, you know, quarterly sale of all DC designers where they brought their goods and they, you know, we found the space that supported that or donated their space for a day, 4 days a year, and we built up a campaign around that was like, you want to see DC's fashion, come meet the designers and support them. And then that became something where you obviously need some type of like, you know, get in the show or you pick, but it's a way to get the consumer direct to the designer. And then then you can build your audience. And once there's an audience, the store is going to say, look at this, you can come to a trunk show and bring an audience. Like, let's do this again. Let's get some, so that's just an idea.
We've got lots of
Can I
audience
add one thing
here
on
real
that?
quick.
So earlier someone mentioned that one of the good things that DC does is collaboration. I think we can do a better job of collaboration. You and I were talking about this earlier, but there are probably 2 or 3 major fashion shows in DC throughout the year. And you know, what ends up happening, I think, is that they end up getting diluted and they're not such a big thing because there's so many. So you have DC Fashion Week and you have ReadySet, you guys do a few, and then some other people do fashion shows. But if it became this one event or 2 that happens in spring, summer, fall, winter, it would have a bigger impact. One in DC because you know you have these 2 or 3 different entities putting together for this one thing, reaching out to their people. But I think it would have a greater chance of making a more national impact as well. But by having so many, it just gets diluted and people are like, oh, another fashion show.
Well, and another fashion week, because you got Maryland Fashion Week, Northern Virginia Fashion Week, Virginia Beach Fashion Week, Baltimore Fashion Week. Now, why do you have a Baltimore Fashion Week and a Maryland Fashion Week? Is it a Maryland? Then you have a DC Fashion Week, and none of them want to sit down and talk to each other and collaborate with each other. So I would say the media, the social media, you know, certain communities
even though we're not a little New York,
but they're not.
a single venue.
And don't lose the focus of what they're for. I get invitations to fashion shows like it's a party. And you know,
They're using it for entertainment.
they're using it for entertainment, and you know, that's not helping anything. You know, it's supposed to be, you know, buyers or boutiques or the media, and that's something that, you know, it's funny that DC is this major media center for politics. We haven't figured out how to make it work for fashion and entertainment, and that is one thing that New York has figured out, how to make that work on the PR end. You know, from a PR end, with effective PR, we could be so much bigger than just being local. And I think we could think bigger with the right PR. I mean, you know, we're talking about local DC, and like I mentioned earlier, I mean, a New York designer is, you know, people may look at them as a national designer, but they're a New York designer. They figured out how to make that PR arm work, and they are national now. So.
Let's, a lot of hands up in the audience.
I was going to say, I actually teach a business business plan class for designers. So those of you who are designers and need money, the DC Women's Business Center actually provides up to $50,000 in a microfinance loan. And the underwriting standards are actually easier than if you were to get a traditional loan. But the thing is, what I find with a lot of creative businesses is that you don't have a business plan. If you sit down and write a business plan, you have access to money. And if you're trying to produce something and you don't have your own money, you're gonna have to be okay with taking out debt or equity from other people to grow your business and move forward. You can't be scared of that. In addition, Eileen Fisher has a business plan competition that'll give you up to $10,000. Tory Burch has a business plan competition. You also qualify for microfinance loans. But again, if you don't have a business plan, if you're calling yourself a designer, but you want to do this full time, and you want to have a full-time business, and you don't have a business plan, you're already dead in the water. So the first thing that for those of you who are producing, if you don't have a business plan, go home and write one.
So your hand up. Go for it.
I just wanted to touch on what Jackie said about kind of a designer's market, because I don't know if anyone's did, I hate to mention New York because it is a rivalry, but they have a young designers market in Soho on Mott Street, and I think it's very successful. And I think, whereas that's marketed for young designers, and that's maybe not what we're trying to do, but I think in a sense, it's this warehouse space that's very, I can imagine a ton of spaces in DC could accommodate that. And I think, low budget booths, but it's the atmosphere they're creating. And I was actually in Madrid, and there was something very similar in Madrid just recently, and I felt like I was at the same designers market. It's this young feel, and there's sometimes there's refreshment, there's music, and it's just that buzz, and people can be blogging about it, come to there, and it's everyone's there collaborating, and then you're meeting people, and you're exchanging money for goods, that's important too. So I think, that's something I haven't seen in DC. I think, of course, Eastern Market.
Art Wino just did that this past summer. Art Wino just did that this past summer. He's planning to brand that every single summer. I was at the Yard property, and that's where he had fashion and craft and music and art, and just everyone came out there, and it was like every first Sunday of the month. And he plans to continue to brand that. So definitely Google Art Wino to join that.
I think he needs better marketing. I attended one of it, and it was not a good look or feel.
Really?
But I think because you said that, maybe the designers here will jump on board, because the Yards is beautiful. It's a fashion show. It's amazing. It started raining, but we were out rain dancing. Cool concept. But
She did the fashion show.
who did the fashion show? You did? I'm sorry, you? Oh, okay, cool. But yeah, they need to market it better, because I think it's a very
Well,
good
it's a
outlet.
first. Anytime there's a first, it's like you learn from your mistakes and you keep growing it and branding it, and the community get behind it, and the bloggers get behind it, and the people will come. So, it's a concept, like I say, an idea, no idea is a new idea. It's all in how you implement it. Okay. So yeah.
I've seen a raised hand over here.
Hi. I'm Millie Donkey. I'm the head of marketing for Obvious Magazine, which is an online magazine, fashion mag. We're based in LA and New York. We just opened up an area, actually our office in GPK, so that's going to be debuting like really soon. Just to touch, I heard a lot of stuff here actually. To touch on what she was saying about the showcasing coming together and showcasing the different designers. Miami, we travel a lot, and our team is really big. So I'm always going to different areas, and Miami and New York does what she says, and it's really great. Like, I'm always meeting new people in Miami and New York, new designers, up and coming designers, and and I keep their information, and when they do shows and stuff, so it's easy for me to, if somebody wants to do a feature in the magazine, it's easy to access those people. Also, something he said, we get invited to a lot of stuff in the area, the DMV area, and we'll hear the name like premiere, we'll hear like fashion show, and we go and we're shocked at what we see, because I don't know if it's just a lack of knowledge in the area of what a fashion show is or a premiere is, because it scares me, and I'm kind of like, and I have a lot of friends and designers and stylists that are in DC, so I never, bash DC. Even with what she said about the DC Fashion Week, there are several things that I read about, him being here for 15, 14 years, and for the show to be like that was unacceptable. So, we never do anything negative in the magazine. If you guys ever check out the magazine, come get a card from me. I'll give you guys a card. There's nothing ever negative in there. We just kind of like, we see it and we're shocked and we just kind of just like move on to the next city. So that's something also that I wanted to say, like, I don't know where people can gain the knowledge, but it's weird. It's, I see it a lot. And then also I had something else. I don't know if we answered this, but the biggest thing I find with the DC area is it's hard to find events, like the fashion events. So it's always we're here, we're like in a hotel, and then like I'll get on blogs, and then that's when I'm hearing the tail end, like, oh, the event was nice. And I'm like, oh, where was the event? And I came here, and I'll do my own Google, like fashion events in DC, fashion events tonight. Anything, and I switch it up and try to figure out like where these events are, and I can never find anything, but I'm always just like catching blogs after saying, oh, it was dope, or it was nice. I'm like, oh man, we missed it. So I'm trying to figure out like where is there a central area that I can get like fashion events. And I know you said something about your do you monitor what they put on their blog?
Yeah, we do. And we get a lot of people who will email us about upcoming events, and we have a website. It's actually CapFABB.com, where we do a weekly like roundup of events, as well as like things that are going on, like just general like news items that are going on in the area. And I think that that's something that's been getting better.
Okay.
Especially now that we have, between all these individuals who will get pitches from media, or who will just hear about things, we can kind of centralize that all. So it's getting better. I know there are other areas
All things fashion has been doing really well.
They're doing a good job.
They're doing a great job curating events.
I also think you've got two amazing resources right here.
Yeah.
Like, as a shop owner, these are my go-to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of them. It's just...
Jordan, do you want to speak to, as somebody who's spearheaded both a fashion show and sort of a shop element at that show, kind of speak to that really quickly?
Yeah, I had a point. I'm trying to get back to it. Well, like you were saying, of having maybe like a quarterly, I don't want to call it fair, but something where people get together. We're trying to do it. It's small. It's a small effort, but we're trying to grow it, where we have a shopping component on the event site of a fashion show. All emerging designers, or they have emerged. Pranav has been involved, twice? Like great quality designers coming out of the District of Columbia, Virginia, and Maryland. But we're trying to grow it, and one way we can is to perhaps create a grant program, where we have, it becomes a source for, if a designer is in need, they can go to find some money to help them in their efforts of outsourcing production or their own production. But yeah, there's a lot of talent here, and there's also a lot of connecting the dots that we need to work to do, because these people are here, the media sources are here, the events are here, the designers are here. We just have to work to get it all together.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to touch on Jordan's point. What I wanted to say earlier is that I've also tried to organize shopping events featuring indie designers like Hugh and Crye, and the thing that drives me crazy in DC is retail space is so expensive. I thought I was going to open my own shop, and $92 a square foot, I almost had a heart attack. Just looking on Craigslist. I think if the city incentivized some of these people who are sitting on empty storefronts, we have enough space to have a emporium every week. And there's enough people to fill it, there's enough people to patronize it. The traffic that the ones that have happened have already had is incredible. And I think it's just, the pop-up shops are awesome, and half of 14th Street is empty. And it should just be filled every weekend.
So I know there are two ladies up here who have been dying to, peach skirt, and fabulous ostrich bag. Did you have? Go for it.
Thank you all for being here. I'm coming from more of a legal perspective, law student, fashion law blogger, currently lobbying for the Innovative Design Protection and Piracy Prevention Act. It's currently in the Senate right now. And what I just wanted to give a little bit of a plug for that and to see, just to let you all know as designers that we need a lot more support. We have the CFDA, we have the American Apparel Footwear Association, but we need to hear more from the designers that this legislation would impact on a grassroots level. So, we're trying to do the best we can, but we really need to hear from you guys. And also another comment would be, as far as marketing is concerned, DC has, although we have great emerging designers, we also have great artists, we have, a great creative, vibrant community. And I always believe in diversifying. So if there's any way that, our marketing approach could be, less focused and more broad, I think that the word, to our consumers could be spread a lot more quickly. As we've already mentioned, our consumers aren't necessarily, the creative type. They just want to buy clothes. So, finding their niche and what they're interested in, and if they're government employees or whatnot, finding ways to appeal to them on a broader level, like collaborating with artists, music artists, etc. So, those are my 2 cents.
Awesome. Do you want to go red? Also fabulous outfit.
Thank you.
Turban.
My name is Desiree Van Frederick, and I'm the Executive Director of Fashion Empowering Women Foundation. And before moving into the nonprofit sector, my background is in fashion with FIT and work as a buyer for a luxury department store. And in New York, and came back about 5-6 years ago because the industry was budding here, and I was like, wow. Growing up here, this didn't exist. Like this didn't exist. I went to a refinery event a week and a half ago. That was like, that would not have ever happened. And the fact that fashion is budding here and there's so much talent, and I meet people from all backgrounds who they contact us because we use the word fashion in our name strategically, but it gets their attention. Everyone wants to be a part of that industry, and our work is to support nonprofits, girls and women's organizations. But we've also taken on the course of supporting these young creatives because they're lost. They really don't know where to turn. There's no one to really mentor them. There's no, the education is limited in terms of they don't have access to it, direct access to it. And so they're just, they're home, they're designing, they're creating these gorgeous garments. They have the vision, but don't know how to implement it. And then when they, they feel intimidated to even come to an event like this, if they even hear about it. So there's definitely a limitation to it's not accessible. Like we have 1 million and 1 fashion shows in the area, but we see the same faces over and over and over and over. I mean, I've probably seen each of you at some point in the last 2 or 3 months. So it's just we need to broaden that, and I think that was a great point that you just brought. We have to broaden it. We have to bring up people inside. There's great talent here, and a lot of them are just leaving DC because they don't feel welcome. They don't feel supported. Like, oh, I'm just going to move to New York because my talent will be respected there. While in DC, they don't feel that way. And that's really a shame because they'll leave the city and will never say that they're a DC designer. You know what I mean? They'll claim New York, but they were probably born and bred here, but and that's sad. And so we're losing great talent because we're not supporting and nurturing them.
I would say Tasha came back.
Tasha
FIT and came back.
Yeah,
she came back, and she's doing very well.
Yes.
So TashaSin.com. I'll just
we are running late, but I think that actually gives us a really good segue into, and I am going to do the go along. Not now, sorry. What has to happen next? Like from your perspective, from where you sit in this fashion community, what do you really want to see happen next? And that can be as broad or as specific, but what next? Sorry, that's fine.
I guess personally, I would love to hear more about what I can do and what bloggers in general can do, because I think we're really really willing to do whatever we can to support the local DC fashion scene. I mean, if there's a pop-up shop or if there's a particular designer that we can interview and feature, I think that I'd love to, any information that I can get, anything that I can do, don't be afraid to contact us bloggers in general. They're definitely really willing to help out. So.
Well, what's next is the fashion incubator for us. So infrastructure is my main thing to put in place. The education, the business training, the technical design training, formal training, so we have that quality. The manufacturing, the jobs. So the fashion incubator on N Street will be there until June 2012. It'll be transitioned to Good Hope Road in 16,000 square feet about summer of 2012. So the fashion incubator and then the Fashion Institute, which is the 2-year academy for the youth. So that's the education so we can continue to grow our community. So training.
I guess there's a couple things from me.
Money?
I'll get into that in a second.
That grant.
I think the first thing is, this is a great start, and we're talking about. Well, I was talking a lot about advocacy. While some people up here are doing advocacy, we need everyone in here to be an advocate for fashion in DC. Whether it's pushing, go testify. Whether it's trying to get us more money to get to you, or just encouraging people to support local boutiques and local designers. That's a start. I don't want this to be a fad. We got to keep this going. I was explaining to you earlier, I don't want fashion because it's on everyone's lips right now. I don't want fashion to be like the new cupcakes in DC. So, I don't want it to be around, everybody's talking about it for 4 or 5 years and then it's like on to something else. So that's the first thing. And then the second, from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, I can't guarantee anything, but I am going to push for a fashion-focused grant program. I think that would be great to be able to get young designers off the ground with whether it's they need a grant for marketing or a show or whatever it is that they need help with. I am going to talk to some folks if we can make that happen by the next fiscal year, because we've just completed FY 2012, but see if I can get something done for 2013.
I just want to say that I'm really excited about all that's happening here. I think that we're off to a great start. I'm glad to meet all of you guys. I've seen all your names and emailed you and seen stuff, but I didn't know what you guys looked like. But all of you, I've heard all your names before. I'm really excited about the Fashion Incubator and everything that's going to be happening. As far as one thing that I think would be an immediate thing that we can start pushing is I think that we all need help to try to do what we're trying to do. And I put out ads occasionally for interns to colleges and stuff like that, and it seems like there's a lot of young students who want to help everyone, and I think that if we had a resource and we can find interns and people to help us, that all this would go a lot faster. So that's kind of my main concern.
I was going to say 2 things. What's next for me is that for Refinery, I can't write about national fashion. It's a DC site, so I'm going to cover what's happening in DC. I'm going to cover you guys. I'm going to cover you guys and stores that are opening, and so I just need you to send me what you're working on. I mean, I can keep up with so much, but it's always helpful to get like specific pitches. It's not enough just to email and say, I'm a DC designer, I'm really good. Send me photos, tell me where you're sold, tell me a link to your store. Like, if you're pitching to a media publication, my best advice is to read that publication and see how they package their content. Don't just blitz them with anything. And I was going to say, in terms of the scene in general, I think it's awesome that bloggers are starting to create this network. And I think it would be really good if designers created their own network, where it's just a collective, you guys meet, you talk about how can you share a production team, how can you share interns, just another sort of grassroots organization in the same same vein. That
I was going to piggyback on that. I think that bloggers and designers in DC need to connect more. I mean, the only time I've met a couple of designers was at the ReadySetDC meet and greet, and I actually didn't know who was who. You know, I'm a blogger and I should have maybe known, but face to face, I didn't know who was who. So I think the designer need to approach bloggers like, from personal experience, I wouldn't even say we're a huge blogger, but we get national campaigns, you know, sending us stuff or like pitching us things that we don't care about. And it would be nice, no, I mean, we really don't. So half the time, like, it's not my type of product, but it would be great to get that from a DC local designer. I would love to showcase your stuff and, you know, show our readership and national readership what you guys are about, what you're doing. So I think it's that connection between bloggers and designers and maybe even other creatives. Branding is huge. You know, make sure your stuff looks great. You know, if you're a blogger or designer, make sure your logo is fantastic. There are great creative designers and, you know, that are willing to work for free, or photography, you know, all those things really make a difference. People are visual. You know, our world is visual. Make sure your stuff is top notch. So that's nice.
Jordan.
Yeah, well, I guess from an event and a media side, you know, listening to what you guys and everyone on this panel has been talking about, it's been very inspiring. So, you know, going off that and working on the next fashion district that we plan to do in March of 2012. And just continuing the conversation. I think that's very important. You know, making sure, like you said, it's not a fad. You know, let's keep it going.
So I keep thinking of this analogy as we're all talking, and I keep thinking about the movie Horton Hears a Who. And I think it has to be real, it has to be a focus and a clear collective yell of the things that are going to stick around, and from everyone. It can't be, I think bloggers have a great place. It's not everything. I think designers have a great place. Like, we all need each other. The papers still have a very valid, you know, the newspapers are still, you know, we can't discount them and we can't discount every other type of store. But there has to be some type of collective yell that is not obnoxious. That says that, like, yes, it is here, it is real, it is not a trend. You know, and DC is a creative place that people want to be, and that isn't just hip, like, and there's, you know, as someone said the other day, like, there's no turning back. So that's what I say, collect your yells.
I'll say two things. One, if I'm able to help anyone on the business planning side, on the marketing side, or what have you, I'm happy to. I don't personally get out enough, so I'm taking Holly's advice to actually just get out more, and it's really nice to meet all of you guys. But I really am happy to help anyone if you have any questions about you know, what we do or how we started or whatnot. And then on the other side of things is we do have a space now in Georgetown. Part of it is kind of a showroom that we plan on having events and hosting other people. So be it CapFABB, be it anything, be it another one of these, which it seems like would be great to have more often. You know, we're happy to host, so feel free to reach out.
Great, so I just want to let you all know that this is not the end of the conversation. You know, I feel like a lot of really amazing things have come out of this, and I'm thankful that we were all able to convene in this space. But we have been recording. I'm referring to our videographer here, Nigel. Thank you, Nigel, for recording. So we'll be sharing that with all of you guys, and I've been taking notes as well. Maren and I are setting up an industry meetup in early December. So this is going to be the first of a series of events where we want everybody to come together, and they're going to be focused around a single topic. So we're going to look at what the challenges and issues were that came up tonight, and say, hey everybody, come back together. It's going to be like relaxed, chill, not like formal setting. Let's all talk about X, and we'll do a series of those. So, and I wanted to plug, Jordan is going to have an industry event in late January too. So keep an eye out.
January
for an
26th
email from Jordan. And we're going to be talking with the panelists. We're going to get their post-panel thoughts on what happened, and we're going to be putting those up on our blog. So look for an email from us next week following up on all of these items. And in the meantime, we are at birdsofapleather.com and birdsofapleather@gmail.com if you want to send us any of your thoughts. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the panelists.